Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome back to Broken Arrow. Today the Ignalina map, the power plant. I'm operating with my squad, Janitor, Ripnoder and Pershing, and we have one random in here because we couldn't get a fifth at the time. I am going to be playing defensively this time around. I'm going to quickly grab an area and then hold it. This is definitely not one of those how to push videos, it's more of a, let's say, how to defend. And as I'm doing the commentary afterwards, it's going to make it a bit easier for me to do a bit more in-depth commentary. I might be able to pause the video at points and highlight certain aspects. Now, opening up with a couple of units. Orion first, to get some reconnaissance in. It's not the fastest recon unit. I mean, I would love a reconnaissance helicopter, but that's very expensive to send in. Let's get some Gwardii Mrozak dropped off. These guys are going to be holding the territory for the time being. A Ka-52 is a vehicle I decided on to do an escort for the helicopter. And then we're going to have an Su-57 from one of my allies. I would, of course, like more units, but the units that I did pick are very expensive. So all that I have at the moment is the Ka-52, the helicopter, that's the cargo helicopter, and a Derivacja, which is an NTR unit. Now, I do have this very wide area to the left, which does need some defending. Thankfully, I do have an ally that has the same plan, so I don't really have to dedicate any serious resources to that at the moment. A couple of Hornets spawn in over on the right-hand side, and the Su-57 immediately runs off. I did save up for my own fighter, but at the moment, I simply don't have enough points. And it is rather important that these birds go down, because I do have those expensive helicopters around. And unfortunately, that was the kill on the Orion, so my reconnaissance has died. Arguably, I should have opened up with more recon, especially more mobile recon, but the Ka-52 has such good spawning capability that I decided not to use any, let's say, additional reconnaissance unit yet. It is early game, we have time, I don't need to see everything all at once. Now there goes one of the Hornets, the other Hornet's getting chased down with a 57 right now, but I find a higher priority target. There goes the Hornet, in the form of a transport helicopter. That's a Sea Stallion, I believe, and the faster you kill these things, the fewer infantry they drop off, if any. I mean, it's a fantastic mechanic to be able to drop off multiple units of infantry with one helicopter, but it also means that you're putting a lot of your eggs in one flying basket. And if you do lose that helicopter, you lose all the infantry, which has happened to me a couple of times. Now, I got this random, the Innocent Theo, going over to the left with a couple of reconnaissance units, so that helps me out a lot. Helicopter dropped off a bit early, but I'd rather have it like this than have the helicopter get shot down because I overextended or lost the line of sight to some reconnaissance, or sorry, to some NTR unit that I did not catch. Time to bring in another vehicle. I now have the points for that since the fighter got withdrawn. Bring in Rozvedka, bring in the Terminator. Now the Terminator is going to be there to deal with any infantry that happens to come out. And as you can see, my Guardia, as well as the Ka-52, is knocking out these Humvees, trying to get them as quickly as possible, but they do manage to drop off some tow teams. So these guys do have some boots on the ground, but against my infantry, that should not be that much of an issue. Now immediately, as the Ka-52 comes under fire, I pull it away, and I try to get it to a lower altitude, and I almost get shot down over there. Now, one of the enemy team disconnected over there. I'm not too sure about the stability of the servers. It has increased a lot. It has improved a ton. But it's still somewhat shaky. Sometimes, especially on the night map, you just get people disconnecting or freezing. Sadly, it's the state of affairs in the open beta, and I think that we're going to have that fixed in the full version. Or at least I rather hope so. Now there's finally the Derivacja coming in, so at the moment I just have 2 units of infantry on the field, at least on the front line. I have the Metis coming in, that's going to be providing a lot of overwatch, dealing with vehicles, and at the moment I might be able to ambush some of those marine transports. Especially the LAV-AD would be nice to kill. And you can see that they know that I'm here, so I immediately vacate the building. I don't want to get shot at, and I want to keep these units alive. So get a logistics unit, get some supplies in, and run these guys back. I believe I did kill the LAV-AD over there, and the guys unfortunately ran out of range very quickly. So I might have spooked them a little bit, but I do hand off, of sorts, the units over to my my buddy on the right-hand side saying, hey, you got a couple of Marines coming in, and he was going to handle it from there. You can see that there we are. This is Innocent Theo. Yeah, his boomerang should be able to handle that. Now, time to get some more units. I want to have an Armata. And then I reconsider, and I think a T90A is going to be good enough. I don't really need the Armata, because that's going to be 400 points to the field. That might just be wasted for now. Let's find a good building for these VDV Metis. ATGM launcher. Here is the VDV Razvedka, so the spotter. And this spotter / hunter killer is going to be able to deal with most vehicles. Not all vehicles, mind you, because vehicles that have an active protection system are going to mostly shrug off the missiles. They just won't care as much. Now, some of my infantry has been a bit wounded, so I'm going to not be very aggressive here. And I have the zone, so I don't have to be very aggressive either. I can just hold for a while. Hold, reinforce the position, and let my allies on the right-hand side dig in further, and then push. That was not strictly the plan, but that's what we ended up doing. The guys on the right double-teamed, or maybe even triple-teamed, the last sector for red. And with that, are going to be putting a lot of pressure on that. That does mean that myself and the other guy over here, the random, are going to have to deal with any threats that come this way. Now, I want to have a defense against everything, so I have a couple of Iglos coming in and a cargo. A cargo because I feel it's fairly safe to do that. And I also want to get these infantry there pretty quickly. So that's why I brought the cargo over. Now the BMPT Terminator 2 comes over. I'm not going to park this thing out in the open. I'm going to park it behind the buildings. I want to have it in a position where it's going to be able to support my infantry. And especially deter any kind of infantry assault from their side. When it comes to these defensive lines, you don't strictly have to kill every single infantry unit that you see. You just have to, let's say, wound them enough to make it impossible for them to push. So that's the goal. And that's exactly what the Terminator is there for. It doesn't have to kill all the infantry. It just has to hurt them enough so that they won't be able to actually make the push work. Quick pause over here. This is the spot that I picked for the Terminator. From this angle, it's going to be able to quickly dash out behind that little ledge and be able to eliminate most of the infantry if it happens to start pushing on my position. If a vehicle comes in from the road, I'll be able to use the cover to get away and keep the Terminator safe. In case you're wondering how you get this overview, hold Alt and you're going to be able to see line of sight. At this point I have somewhat of a defensive line, but I don't really have any responsive capability. So if a push comes, yes, I have the Terminator, but I don't really have that much against vehicles, except for that one HEGM unit, that one VDV Metis. So it's time to work over a little bit more. Now I am considering helping out on the right-hand side, because my position's fairly secure and I don't want to have to over-invest on my side. But the problem that I always face when I'm suddenly switching direction, or suddenly switching area of the battlefield, is that you don't really know the situation there. You haven't seen the AA fire, you haven't seen the last position of the enemy infantry, you don't know where that tank went. Switching to a different area does set you back to some extent, because it means that for a moment you won't really be able to do the best that you can. So instead, I refocus on my own sector. Now, one of these guys has taken some injuries, so let's get the resupply over to the wounded infantry team. And over here we instantly connect with an enemy unit. The T-15 Barbaris happens to be there at the exact right time. And this thing is extraordinarily deadly against infantry. I'm trying to keep my own infantry safe while the Barbaris and the Ingenietti take the fight to the infantry. This does mean that the Barbaris is at risk, but the Barbaris has a lot of armor, so it can take a bit of a beating. BMPT saturates the area over there as my own infantry starts smoking up. Press X if they have a smoke grenade to drop that, and start running away, which is the hotkey Z. So you got X and Z right next to each other on the keyboard. I tend to almost push them together. First you press X for smoke, and then you press Z to run away. Keep the guys alive, because it generally means that you just have to heal them up, as opposed to getting a whole new squad. And, well, if they die, your availability is reduced. At this point, the Barbaris has overextended, and while it is very much capable of dealing with a Bradley, It is way overextended because I'm not facing one Bradley, I'm facing two. So the Barbarous goes back, and the Ingenietti with their ATGM, sorry, with their anti-tank weapons, are going to have to fight the Bradley by themselves. Which really shouldn't be that much of a deal for them. Again, trying to keep my units alive. Alternating, the unit has been wounded, pulling that back, getting it repaired, getting it resupplied, and then pushing it out again into the fight. Ingenietti doing quite well over here, and with a couple more shots should be able to take out that Bradley. There's an LV-25A1, which is currently trading with my Terminator, which is a bad trade for him. And the Terminator immediately gets pulled back. Because I don't want to overextend, I don't want to lose the Terminator. The Terminator is more, in this case, a defensive unit, which you could argue is a bad play. I mean, it's an offensive unit, but okay, in this case I'm using it slightly different. Now at this point, somebody went Patriot hunting, they said, except that they did that on the enemy spawn. Objective achieved. They did get the Patriot, but that was extremely aggressive over there. Now at this point I have a T-90 brought forward. This is there to fire support. Again, it's not strictly offensive. I don't really need these guys to come in and start dealing with anything that happens to come too close. Because the T-90 is there to deal with vehicles. And, for example, put pressure on the Force Recon over there. Now, it already took some damage, so I need to be careful with it. Ingenietti took some damage. The Rozvedka have been healed up, and I can pull those again into the fight. The T-90 at this point is way overextended, so I'm going to have to try and reverse it out of here and potentially use its smokescreen to get into cover, because I am way out of position. I'm ahead of my recon by a substantial margin, and that T-90 is in a lot of trouble. Let's get some more infantry in, and let's get the units that were wounded back up, such as the T-90, but there you go, the T-90 way overextended, and immediately I got punished for that. Now, I do mark the infantry's last known position. That is the F1 key, just an attention marker. It's not necessarily to communicate with my teammates, it's just a pin for myself going, hey, there's something here, you need to pay attention to this later. Or, in case I have artillery, I just pin it, and then I go, okay, hit this with artillery. Here comes a Mi-8 with a couple of snipery, so sniper teams, as well as the Rozvedka over on the left has been parked in that building. I don't want to get flanked. And that is a concern. If they are able to push, let's say, infantry plus tanks through those woods, they're going to be able to hit my flank, and I don't want them to. Rozvedka almost died over here, so time to get some snipers over there to relieve the Rozvedka. Not so much that they'll be able to win the fight, but they'll be able to deal some damage with a sniper rifle, and at the same time give the Rozvedka some time to go back and heal up. And at this point, the threat that I was just discussing has materialized. There's a tank and a Bradley coming out of the woods, and I lose my supply vehicle. Thankfully, the Terminator is on the other side of that little pile, and because of that, the tank can't get it. Now, I'm very much considering how I'm going to be dealing with this tank. And at the moment, the best answer I have is going to be the Barbarous, which is not necessarily a great anti-tank vehicle, but especially in groups. Oh boy, they pump out a lot of AGGMs, and they will overwhelm a trophy APS. So an active protection system that would normally be able to take out a lot of missiles is going to get overwhelmed very quickly by a couple of those T-15s. Now, the M1A2 I think is in a bad position because it stays out there. It probably knows it's been detected, at which point I would probably have pulled it back, because it's a very expensive asset and you generally don't want to be aggressive with it like that. There's Bradley, however. That's something I can take down. Now the K-52 has been repaired. I'm able to get a couple of punches in on the M1A2. And of course the player notices that and starts responding, which means the last couple of missiles have been missed. There comes the LAV-AD threat again. So it's time to get the K-52 out again, pull it back, get it resupplied, and use it as the extremely good ATGM unit that it is later. A red player I think is disconnected. I'm not so sure if they reconnect, but in case they did, I must have missed that. Yeah, unfortunately I did lose a boomerang over there. The Ingenietti are fighting the Bradley. And they're doing that because the Bradley is also putting a lot of pressure on the infantry that just came out of the destroyed vehicle. So that's something that I need to keep in mind. LEVAD going off against the Barbaris. That's very optimistic, but very misguided, because it'll never win that. Barbaris has way too much armor for that. Barbaris against mech riflemen with support from the Engineering, but I'm also starting to take artillery fire. So I, at the moment, don't want to get too aggressive here. So let's get some supplies in. Let's drop those off about there. I know that the air is gone, because I just killed it. So for now, I should be able to make something work over there. The Barbaris pulls back, the Guardi pulls back, the Engineering pull back. Again, I'm playing defensive. I want to hold my units alive. That was my focus of this game. Keeping everything alive. Don't have to push, because there's no objective here anyway. I have the objective, I just need to defend it. Now get some more supplies, because a helicopter is not that likely to make it alive that deep. I bring in a second Terminator, because I'm kind of expecting more threats. More infantry to come out of those woods. And to that extent, I also have the Mi-28. So that with that, I can actually do some damage against infantry, if it happens to come to that. For now, I'm going to keep it back. It is my, let's say, my quick response force. These guys, pull them back, behind the buildings. I don't want to get surprised by a tank and lose the Barbaris. That would be a big waste. Get the other infantry back, the Engineering back. You can see there's not a whole lot left of my infantry, like one guy out of a squad of 15, but they're still there. And that's the key. Checking altitude on the Mi-28. Terminator holding position behind the buildings. Again, I don't need to push out with it. It's probably more dangerous than it'll actually be good for me at the moment. You can see that I've deployed most of my infantry, except for all the VDV DSH. I'm actually working with a slightly different deck where I don't even have the VDV DSH anymore. Because I simply don't find them that useful. They're very small squads. And, well, you can use them as raiders to some extent. But they die very quickly. They just don't have the longevity. So that's why you don't see me using the VDV DSH at the moment. They're, at the moment, just shelling the position that I used to have. They're, I think, kind of guessing where my infantry could be. And potentially softening up the position for an attack. So that's why all those mortar impacts are coming my way. It's just not something that I really feel threatened by. But it is an indicator that something is about to happen. These guys are thinking about making a move. So, in that case, I need to get these guys healed up as quickly as possible and be ready for a counter-offensive. The rest of the forces, I'm slightly pulling some of them away, such as the Thepisswasser, which has taken a hit, some more Engineering, which have taken a hit. And I think it's time to do some counter-battery. At least I'm considering it. So I can get the 2S-35 Koalicja, and with that do either counter-battery or use it as a quick response to larger blobs of infantry. Which, again, you don't strictly have to kill all of them. You just have to make sure that you get enough of them so that they're no longer a big blob and that they're no longer a big threat. Now at this point I had the Orion over there on the left. I was surprised to be able to see as far as I did. And moreover, the Orion didn't actually take any Patriot fire. The Americans have the Patriot system, which is incredibly long range and accurate. Look at that, I almost get a kill there. Unfortunately, then a Patriot actually goes off. Time to get the Koalicja. There's a couple of ballistic missiles coming in. And I think an S-300 is going after that. There we go. Ballistic missile gets intercepted. Based on its current position, it could have been going for the middle. So for the guy on my right, it could have been going for me. Whichever it was, I'm glad that missile didn't arrive, because those things do a ton of damage. Now the infantry in the woods, again trying to resupply them, getting them back on their feet, keeping them alive. I'm floating 400 points, but again, I don't really feel the need to attack at the moment. I am interested in harassing the enemy a bit more on the left. So being able to deal with their artillery, which is a pretty sizable investment on their part, if I can get that killed, that would be wonderful. Keeping the Barbaris mostly out of sight, or at least that's my expectation, and getting all the infantry healed up. It does mean that I'm kind of giving away the forest for now, but I have been able to deal with a couple of Bradleys and some infantry over there, so I suspect that there's not that much out there at the moment. You can see that once again, there's a couple of shells coming in on the forest. Again, I'm not anywhere near that position, So my expectation is that he thinks I'm still there, yet he kind of gives away the plot here. He kind of goes, well, I'm about to attack. Pay attention. And there is his infantry. So that little artillery salvo of his, that was a beautiful indicator going, hey dude, we're about to attack. Stuff is about to start hitting you. Which is very gracious of him to give me that level of warning. It's just something that I probably personally wouldn't, at least not as much, because the spacing between the artillery salvo and then the infantry push was a bit long for my taste. Now I am considering pushing back into the forest, but I only have 2 Terminators. I don't really have too much anti-vehicle capability, so I'm kind of waiting for enemy infantry to come out, and there they are. The Terminator instantly starts taking a lot of fire, and it can handle some, but I do try to stay out of range. At which point the infantry has 2 choices. Either push forward into me and die, or reverse. Get back into the tree line and hope that they survive. Now, I do chase after them with both of the Terminators, and again, I'm just trying to reduce the blob. Making sure that the infantry does not get as numerous as they have been, and that they can start pushing. I do trade with some of the other vehicles. There's even some ATGMs coming in. There's another Abrams out there. Or sorry, that might be the same Abrams actually. And my Terminator over here is in a lot of trouble. So, press X, smoke it up. Unfortunately, I don't really have anywhere to go. Because the Terminator is going to get chased down by the M1A2. Yeah, the M1A2 with the trophy. I pushed the Mi-28 in. It does not come with ATGMs, not this variant. But it does come with a couple of rocket pods. I'm just trying to push this player back. And unfortunately, that is going to cut pretty expensive. As the Mi-28 takes a couple of hits. But his NTR isn't that good. It's not that numerous. So I try again and extend. And now he starts pushing all sorts of infantry over. What he should have done over here is push infantry through a smoke screen. Would have been far harder to deal with. But instead, he pushed them right across the open area. And as soon as the Barbaras started firing at them, the infantry in the building started firing at them, they just didn't have a whole lot of options. Now, unfortunately, as expected, I did lose the Terminator there. Barbaras finds another Bradley, and the Barbaras is actually already overextended, so I should have had the Barbaras slightly farther back with the infantry. Because now I'm extending into a bunch of infantry. Quickly pull up artillery. You can hotkey a unit by having it clicked. And then press Control 1, 2, 3 as you would do with most RTS games. And with that be able to very quickly call upon it. So that's what I did there. Hit 3, hit T, and start hitting the enemy units. Now the infantry over here has already taken some damage thanks to the arty. The infantry that I have should be able to handle it, except for that Gwardi Mostrelki, so I'm pulling them back. And I'm immediately trying to get another bit of pushing. Because he pushed into me, but lost some units, so it's time for the counterattack. Let's get a boomerang out there, a nice and fast unit. Kill some transports. That Bradley would be a nice kill, but there is an M1A2 next to it, which promptly gets wiped out by a cruise missile. Very happy with that. I think it was Pershing that hit that with a cruise missile. And I was very surprised that the Abrams just immediately vaporized. Just the moment when I needed that to happen, because I said, I'm not even sure if I said that there was a Patriot, sorry, an Abrams there, but it just vanished. It just vanished. Now the Barbaras is working with one group of engineers. It's not a whole lot, so I'm going to try and pull them back slightly and keep the guys alive, especially as the Barbaras is taking a bunch of fire. I'm going to get more supplies over here. I'm going to get them repaired. Get the infantry a bit more damage, and then start pushing. In the meanwhile, I'll get the Razvedka on the far left forward to start scouting their artillery, and potentially be able to deal with those. Now, the Gwardi over here have been resupplied. The snipers I can push forward. The other snipers are there holding the field. Not so much holding in the role that they'll be able to actually take the fight to the enemy, but they'll actually be able to spot things if it comes to that. Now, more units. Thankfully, the Razvedka were in the building, and unfortunately, I only have the Barbaras over here to help, and the artillery, so I'm putting the Barbaras into a position from where it should be able to help without taking a ton of fire. I have to be very careful with the Barbaras though. I only have 2 of these in my deck. And as I'm starting to trade with the Bradley, I know that I will not win that. So smoke up, pull back, get this thing repaired. And the Zvedka for now, they've done a good job holding the enemy off, but now it's time to run away. Again, push, do a bit of damage, and run away. I'm considering what the best unit is going to be for this particular area, and I'm not too sure, so you assume actually not buying anything there at the moment. Maybe a VDV Metis would have been an okay answer, because it would have done some damage against infantry. Instead I get the 2S31 Vena, which is a mortar. Fires faster than the big arty, does slightly less damage, but again, it's more about suppression. The new Gwardi Modestrelki coming in with their boomerang. This time around there is no tank that's going to be able to threaten them. Although I do slightly overextend there. I should have dropped them off a bit sooner. There's the Zvedka moving forward again. Now, they are definitely harassing my Razvedka. So I'm going to try and pull back. And I see with one of the sniper teams that there's a column of Bradleys coming this way. So at this point, I'm going, okay, I need to resupply my ATGMs over there as quickly as possible. The Derivatia is not going to be very useful, but the Gwardia Modestrelki might be able to ambush some units. Shoot from that forest, maybe do some damage. That's the plan. Now, another bit of supplies comes in. Not a moment too soon, because I got a lot of units that need repair. Potentially more so than I actually have supplies for. And you can see that the Gwardi are already coming under attack from the Bradleys, and the Bradleys are moving into the woods again. So this does give me time to resupply the ATGMs. Unfortunately, well, I don't really need them. There's another vehicle coming in. It's another Bradley. Gwardia Modestrelki pushing back into the tree line as they're now coming under mortar or potentially even bigger artillery fire. And I don't really want to trade with them that much. Get the Zvedka into the building over there. Get some better optics, because from where they are right now, it's just not that good. And these Bradleys are all changing course. They're all moving away from the road just before the HGM can get them. It's a bit of a waste of a good HGM there, but I have a supply depot right next to it. Which is a risk, I should add. Because supply depots can blow up big time. And when they do, they have the potential of wiping out everything around it, especially something as fragile as infantry. So keep that in mind if you're deploying your supplies directly to the front line. Now, that was another bombing run from the F-35B. Unfortunately, it vanished. They kind of clustered the area where I used to be with my infantry. So once again, that goes to show me that he does not really have a lot of reconnaissance in this area. The guys over on the right are making a ton of progress. They got mixed armaments, they have reconnaissance, tanks, fire support vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles. They have a lot. They'll be able to clear that area out pretty quick. And with that, my focus once again becomes dealing with, let's say, the local threats. Getting rid of the enemy artillery, getting rid of high-value targets, and potentially, for example, in this case, the paladins, because that is big deployment of points. If I can get that killed, it not only costs them all the points, but also takes away from their ability to put pressure on my troops. Just in range. There. Couple of shells out. Now the boomerang is not a very well suited vehicle to deal with that Bradley. Also the Bradley is behind cover. The boomerangs in this particular setup are only armed with a heavy machine gun. They're mostly there as an infantry taxi. The Barbaras is the actual fighting vehicle. That thing actually deals the damage. And as I push forward with the Gwardi and the T-15, they encounter some infantry, they encounter some Bradleys, and they just immediately start wiping things out. Now the Vena over there she goes, is in a very bad spot, far too far forward, and I got punished for that hard. I should not have had my mortar in the middle of the conflict area. Bad play there. Mech engineers coming in, Barbaras pulls back, artillery joins the fight. Modestrelki now taking some serious losses, so again resupplying the area, again keeping my troops alive, giving up a bit of terrain to buy myself some time. But I have both, because I know that my guys are going to be working over on the far right hand side, capturing the last sector. So my objective here, again, is to hold the most territory without losing my units. It was just an exercise in keeping your stuff alive. A couple of Terminators that I called in there might make it to the front line. They might make it a bit late. For now, it's going to be the best answer to what I have in these tree lines. A mix of infantry, a couple of Terminators, and a Barbarus should be able to handle almost everything there. The Barbarus is trading with the Bradley. Got it killed. Immediately I pulled back the Ingenuity and the Gvardi, because the infantry is going to have to come to me. And if they do that, I have the Barbarus ready for them. The Ingenuity, they're down to one man. Very, very weak position at the moment. The Armata joins in. Very expensive asset that I have over there, the Armata. I had it called in at some point because I needed it to deal with the Abrams, or at least so I thought. But at the moment, I really don't need to. You can see that their Paladins on the top left-hand side are a bit panicked and they're relocating. The Zvedka are still spotting them, so I can re-engage them if I see fit, but at the moment I don't really need to. At this point, I would have wanted the Boomerang to have an autocannon to deal with these guys, but again, it's not really that much of a priority. The sector on the enemy side is getting capped. We have Janitor flying around here with the drone lasing the targets. Unfortunately, I think nobody capitalized on that. But we have the zone, and it is a victory. With this playstyle being very defensive, I got a kill-death ratio of 3.83. I'm very happy with that. I haven't had it that high before. I think it is only going to really work this well when you have a defensive setup, as opposed to going on the offense. Offensive actions always incur more casualties. Defensive is much, much easier. Now, as for what the other player could have done better, he could have tried to flank me a bit more than he did. He kept going through the forest time and time again, and he knew that I had infantry there, except I was killing all of his infantry, and he was losing infantry without really having been able to resupply them. He just killed all of them, or rather, I killed all of his forces off, and he had to buy them again, reducing his availability. So, I'd say a bit more flexibility in where he should have attacked, and potentially use, well, not so much an Abrams in the forest, because that would have been deadly. Maybe try and fight a different angle, or switch to a different side of the map. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this way of doing commentary. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you soon for another video.